Court is now in session.
We will now hear the case of the International Military Tribunal versus Julius Streicher. The prosecution may now begin their opening.
Justices of the Tribunal, today I present the case of Julius Streicher, whom I am setting out to prove guilty of conspiracy and crimes against humanity. Julius Streicher was a part of the German Socialist Party before becoming a member of the Nazi Party. Both parties had anti-Semitic views, which led to Streicher joining Hitler and the Nazis and bringing a great deal of his followers with him. His support of the Nazi Party helped them gain power throughout Germany, and his propaganda played a big role in the party and in spreading the Nazi ideology to the German people. Streicher was responsible for widely spreading anti-Semitic propaganda throughout Germany using his newspaper Der Stürmer. Through his publications and speeches, he directly targeted the Jews and had the intention of inciting the German people against them. He was editor, publisher, and owner of Der Stürmer and used the newspaper to publish articles emphasizing that the Jews were the enemy and must be defeated. In document M31, an article written and published by Streicher, it was written that the Jews will be exterminated and later referred to the extermination as the removal of parasites. Other articles included false information about the Jewish Holy Book, stating that it was filled with murder, incest, and theft, and as seen in document M4, the book taught that it pleased the Jewish God to kill as many non-Jews as possible. These articles were read by a countless amount of people throughout Germany and contained false information that was damaging to Jews. Spreading these false claims that Jews wanted to please God by killing non-Jews instilled fear into the readers, and that was exactly the intention of the articles. By publishing false information that made people fear Jews and a supposed Jewish domination, it encouraged the German people to fight back and protect themselves. Der Stürmer was crowded with articles portraying Jews as criminals, devils, and disseminators of diseases, as stated in the leading Der Stürmer article from document M36. In an article of a newspaper founded and edited by Streicher, the sperm of a Jewish man was compared to that of an alien, and it was written that one single cohabitation of a Jew with an Aryan woman was sufficient to poison her blood forever, meaning that she would not be able to produce Aryan children. It was also written in this article that the Jewish doctor rapes his patients while they are under anesthetic because he wants the German girl and the German woman to absorb the alien sperm of a Jew. Another article from Der Stürmer, titled The Germ, stated that the non-Jewish people defend themselves against the intrusion and the spreading of the Jews, just like the human body defends itself against invading germs. These were the lengths to which he went into propagandizing against the Jews. Jews were accused of committing ritual murders, which was a supposed Jewish tradition and a law to them. Special issues of Der Stürmer were published solely dedicated to the subject and went into detail on how ritual murder was performed. In the article from document 2700 PS, the murders were compared to the slaughtering of animals, and it was written that they have been committed by Jews for centuries. This type of propaganda was an incitement to murder, meant to motivate the German people to avenge themselves against Jews. Other special issues included the topic of race pollution. It was written, specifically in document M39, that the highest task of the state was to conserve people, blood, and race. It goes on to say that race pollution was a crime against this law and should be punishable by the death penalty. Some of the headlines of that same issue were titled, Jewish Race Polluters at Work, and The Jewish Butler, He Steals from His Jewish Masters and Commits Race Pollution. These headlines refer to Jews as race polluters, which was previously stated by Der Stürmer as a crime punishable by death. Not only was this anti-Jewish propaganda broadcasted to adults, but it was also shown to children. Streicher emphasized the need for teaching the youth anti-Semitism at a very early age. He addressed children in speeches, speaking of how the Jews took away everything from the people after the war. In a speech to 2,000 children in 1936, from document M44, Streicher asked children if they knew who the devil was, and the children answered that it was the Jew. He aimed to convince people that the Jews were against the Germans and even saying in document M2 that parents needed to drum that into their children's heads. Also, in document M4, he says that in order to overcome the Jews, hatred against the Jews must be planted into the hearts of the youth. Der Stürmer also published children's books. The Poisonous Mushroom included stories in which Jews were portrayed with very exaggerated features. One story was about a Jewish doctor with the face of the devil who tried to attack a young German girl. Another story includes children telling each other about Streicher's speech where he talked of the serious danger which Judaism was for the whole world. He also said that without a solution of the Jewish question, there will be no salvation of mankind. In that speech, Streicher talked for 2 hours, and the children were so immersed in it that it seemed like 2 minutes to them. In another book entitled Don't Trust the Fox in the Green Meadow, nor the Jew on His Oath, it was written that Jesus Christ says the Jew is a murderer through and through. The book thanks Streicher for Germany remaining healthy and free of Jewish residue. It also showed German children reading the Stürmer and telling others, read the Stürmer, dirty Jews. These books depicted Jews in an offensive light and were published with the intention of convincing children that Jews were the enemy. The effect of the propaganda is evident with the way that the children responded to Streicher's speeches and Der Stürmer itself. Streicher used his position in the Nazi Party to spread a message to Germans about defeating the enemy of the world. In a speech from document 2583 PS, he said that the enemy was the world Jew and that the Jew must die. Also in a speech from 1925, which is document M13, he speaks of annihilating the Jews. He openly announced to the German people that full and final victory will have been achieved only when the whole world has been rid of Jews. His publications and speeches were an incitement to Germans to commit the tasks that would come to exterminate millions of Jews. Streicher frequently spoke of getting rid of the Jews and how Germany will only be free when they were excluded from ordinary life. He signed an article that said the 2 ways which might have led to a liberation of Europe from the Jews was expulsion or extermination. Both documents M22 and M45 include people stating that Streicher and Der Stürmer have enlightened the masses as to the Jewish world danger. The mass extermination of Jews would not have been possible without people to carry out the tasks. The anti-Semitic propaganda published in Der Stürmer succeeded in convincing people that Jews were a danger to society. As a result, they were influenced into believing that Jews were the enemy, and because of this, Germans were willing to carry out the murders themselves. Julius Streicher preached the defeat of the Jews and managed to convince the German people that their existence was at stake. He filled the minds of the youth with anti-Semitism, leaving behind a generation of people poisoned with hatred. Julius Streicher needs to be found guilty of the charges of crimes against humanity and conspiracy, as his propaganda made the persecution and extermination of Jews possible. Thank you.
Thank you, prosecution. The defense may now begin their opening.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ms. Ailing, and I stand before this tribunal to represent defendant Julius Streicher against the charges of conspiracy and crimes against humanity. To begin with my defense, I would like to clearly state the reasons as to why Mr. Streicher is innocent. I will follow with more detail. Even when appointed Gauleiter, Mr. Streicher remained an outsider to all Nazi gatherings and had no connection to their plans for the German people. Mr. Streicher was not the first publisher of the anti-Semitic material in question. Rather, he continued an idea that had been present for hundreds of years. Mr. Streicher never carried out himself, told the people of Der Stürmer, or let alone ordered Nazis to commit murder or treason. Mr. Streicher did not write a vast majority of the evidence in question. And lastly, Der Stürmer was not associated with any party, its identity remaining a private news source while still protected by the Ministry of Propaganda as free speech. I repeat, Der Stürmer and the rest of Mr. Streicher's publishings are free speech. Like most of the German population, Mr. Streicher is an anti-Semite, and when he created Der Stürmer in 1923, his goal was to spread knowledge of anti-Semitism to the German people not to proliferate the popularity of the Nazi Party. Der Stürmer was not formally aligned with any party, and while he was personally associated with the National Socialists, his paper was not a party organ. The prosecution has blatantly stated that Mr. Streicher's paper was a major endorsement of the party. However, there is no evidence that would suggest a formal connection between the Nazis and Der Stürmer, other than their shared hatred for the Jewish people. Moreover, document Streicher 10 outlines Mr. Streicher's disconnection from party intentions, highlighting the outsider status to the Nazi Party Mr. Streicher maintained. My final statements regarding the conspiracy charge are as follows. Mr. Streicher will not deny that his newspaper spread knowledge of anti-Semitism to hundreds of thousands of people, but through his publishings, he did not condone the Nazi Party's actions, nor was he closely associated with Hitler's inner circle in a professional manner. As we sit here today, Mr. Streicher does not even identify as a Nazi, as he was formally removed from the party in 1940, leaving connections severed. The next and final charge that was placed on Mr. Streicher was his alleged crime against humanity. I would like to first start by addressing the fact that Mr. Streicher was not the first or only person to be publishing anti-Semitic texts. Anti-Semitism is not a modern concept, and the discrimination of Jews has been happening for centuries. For instance, On the Jews and Their Lives, a 65,000-word anti-Semitic treatise was published in 1543 by the acclaimed theology professor Martin Luther, further proving that not only is anti-Semitism a pre-existing concept, it has been around for hundreds of years. That being said, different from Martin Luther, Mr. Streicher did not use his writings to provoke violence or order his readers to take action against Jews, like the prosecution has claimed. Mr. Streicher periodically shared statements through Der Stürmer where he commemorated the killings of Jews, as many other authority figures did during this time, and he was not opposed to their removal. However, he never flagrantly told the readers of Der Stürmer to take action, nor did he take action himself. Therefore, he didn't commit a crime. I would like to emphasize document Streicher 12, which directly addresses those who have taken part in such aggressive behaviors and advises them that their behavior is unacceptable and will bring no results. These violent actions taken by readers of Der Stürmer are entirely out of the hands of Mr. Streicher, as he is only responsible for the words he put into the public. I repeat, Mr. Streicher is only responsible for the words he put into the public. Likewise, I would like to emphasize document Streicher 1 to the justices and highlight Der Stürmer's connection to the Ministry of Propaganda. The Ministry of Propaganda, established in 1933, was a government branch that worked to closely monitor all public publishings in order to further enforce the Nazi ideology. In this document, the Führer clearly states that Der Stürmer is not associated with the Nazi Party. However, since it is accepted under the Ministry of Propaganda, Mr. Streicher's publishings in Der Stürmer are protected speech, meaning the words he projected into the public were 100% legal. As we speak about the legality of Mr. Streicher's actions, I would like to address a book that was published under his name, The Poisonous Mushroom. Written in 1938 by Ernst Heimer, not Mr. Streicher, The Poisonous Mushroom was a children's book aimed to educate the youth on the practices of anti-Semitism. Mr. Streicher did not write this book and did not force German primary schools to utilize it. However, he's still being charged in a way that would hold him accountable for the repercussions of the storybook. The youth that is being discussed here today had already been exposed to anti-Semitism well before the creation of The Poisonous Mushroom. The Hitler Youth, first originating in 1922 and officially established in 1933, had acquired over 2 million members. Now I ask the justices, how can Mr. Streicher be responsible for the enlightenment of a generation that had already been claimed by Hitler himself. Furthermore, Mr. Streicher cannot be blamed for a book he didn't
Sorry, prosecution, your time is up.
didn't establish in the school system and is
Prosecution,
ultimately protected by the Ministry of
time is up. The defendant may now make their statement.
Your Honors, I, Julius Streicher, am innocent. I have abided by the laws of this country. First, I am accused of creating a blueprint for the war I had no role in drafting. I am accused of creating policies I had no hand in designing. I am accused of attending the conferences Hitler held explaining his decisions to leaders. I was not there. I am accused of being included in Hitler's inner circle of advisors, which I was not. Second, I had the right to express my opinion, whether through my speeches or my newspapers, through free speech laws. By definition, journalism will always be biased. My platforms are no exception. The German population had the ability to access other sources and to think critically of the presented information, and yet they chose not to. I should not be held responsible for how Germany responded to my words. The German school system's willingness to utilize and implement my children's books into their classrooms was also out of my control, as they were not forced to by any means. Without the support of the German people, Der Stürmer would not have become the famous newspaper it is now known to be. It would have diminished or dissolved into just another small, insignificant piece of writing. My ideas resonated with the German people, who then carried them forward, not me. Like this tribunal, I'm a product of my environment. I grew up in an anti-Semitic community and an anti-Semitic school system. So am I to be penalized because I was raised to believe what I believe? The environment in which any given person was born is unalterable and defining. Over the duration of my life, the concept that the Jewish people were a threat to the sanctity of Germany was branded into me. Accordingly, I took it upon myself to protect Germany in the only way I knew how, by advocating those teachings that I received as a child, like so many other Germans. The prosecution is questioning actions that I took, actions made with the intention of defending my beloved country from who I perceive to be our greatest threat, the Jews. Having been a teacher, I understood that the trajectory of Germany lay in its youth. Therefore, I provided books to the younger generation of how I believed Germany would triumph. I taught children in the same manner in which I was educated, an environment that fostered Germans to defend our beloved country from opposing forces by any means necessary. Despite having a predisposition against the Jews, I have never wanted them to be met with any form of violence, including the violence the Nazi Party resorted to when enacting mass killings. I wanted to take an approach similar to many Zionists and relocate the Jews to Madagascar, a concept that would have effectively and peacefully restored Europe to its orderly state and would provide a safe homeland to the Jewish people. I acknowledge that I remained the publisher of Der Stürmer until 1945, but I was no longer its editor nor writer after 1933, and had little to do with the content from that point on. The vast majority of the prosecution's evidence are articles I did not write or edit, as they were written after 1933. Moreover, while there were anti-Semitic children's books that were published after 1933 by the printing department of Der Stürmer, I neither illustrated nor wrote them. As Gauleiter, I participated in no strategic planning, but rather held an administrative position. The Führer, Adolf Hitler, appointed me to govern over Franconia, where I held all responsibility for Hitler over the sector for 15 years, making all the actions that I took as Gauleiter in Franconia legal. I reiterate, despite being Gauleiter, I had no knowledge of Hitler's plans, and the prosecution has no evidence to prove otherwise. My work derives from my life experiences, which was not unlike other Germans at the time. My vision to resolve the turmoil in Germany was the nonviolent, peaceful Madagascar plan to relocate the Jews to Madagascar. I have never murdered, exterminated, enslaved, deported, or committed other inhumane acts against the civilian population before or during the war. I'm a journalist. I write about the world as I see it. So while the tribunal may disagree with my perspective, none of my actions were inconsistent with the laws at that time. I have not committed a crime.
Thank you, defendant. The direct examination may now begin.
Did you commit or take part in the violent persecution of the Jewish people?
In many of the cases that we've seen so far, the tribunal has been working to answer the question, do giving orders constitute a crime, as the recipient has the free will to not follow them? However, that does not apply here, as I never ordered the readers of Der Stürmer to harm the Jewish people in any way. Even if I did, a statement from a newspaper holds no power over the reader, while an order from Göring to a Nazi under him does. Germany should have gone into reading every single newspaper they read, understanding that what they were about to read was biased information. I was informing civilians, not creating murderers. In the indictment of the International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg, it states that those who committed crimes against humanity, persecuted on political, racial, and religious grounds, in execution of and in connection with the common plan mentioned in count 1. I already established in my plea that the charge of conspiracy is ludicrousy, as I had no knowledge of Hitler's policies, and the prosecution has no evidence to contradict that statement. I never persecuted the Jews in execution of and in connection with the common plan mentioned in count 1. I have always worked independently. I've never physically hurt the Jews in any way, and I've never wanted any violence. Der Stürmer was directed towards non-Jewish Germans, not the Jews. I did not persecute the Jews. Why would I employ a Jewish man, Jonas Wolk, at Der Stürmer and pay him a very good salary, may I add, if I truly believe that all Jews should die?
Are you a Nazi, or was Der Stürmer in affiliation with the Nazi Party?
No, I'm not a Nazi. I was kicked out of that party at the very beginning of the war. Although the anti-Semitic principle of the Nazi Party aligned with Der Stürmer's anti-Semitic focus, the two were not associated. Are two people not allowed to agree on one thing but disagree on many other things? Der Stürmer never held the status as a party paper, and as my attorney stated, it was not a party organ. Many people, including the Nazi Party, knew Der Stürmer was independent from their influence. In the early 1920s, when I was part of another party, I was no longer permitted to rise to that party's leadership after the leaders realized that they had absolutely no control over what was published in my newspaper. The Nazis had no control over what was published in Der Stürmer, and they never owned Der Stürmer.
Please elaborate on your previous statement that the Germans had the ability to be uninfluenced by your words.
I stand by my previous statement entirely. When the German citizen passed by a newsstand, did they not have a variety of options to choose from other than Der Stürmer? Even if Der Stürmer was the only newspaper left, were they unable to walk away and just not buy a newspaper? No, Germany was perfectly capable of not reading Der Stürmer, and it would not have been a hard task. This also applies to my speeches. Germans came to hear me speak every week. Were they forced to? No. The public also had the ability to stop reading and buying Der Stürmer and to stop attending my speeches, which again would not have been a hard task. The tribunal needs to understand that Der Stürmer was my primary source of income, and to make a profit, I needed to get as many issues and publications purchased. So I exaggerated and amped up what I personally believed. People were already attracted to anti-Semitic journalism long before I arrived. So I catered the paper to the readers. The more anti-Semitic it was, the more readers, the more money I received. It's simple, supply and demand. If I was not received well as a speaker, or Der Stürmer was as a newspaper, I would have lost funding for the Der Stürmer and would have been replaced by someone else as a speaker, and I would not be here today.
What was your involvement in Der Stürmer by the end of the 1930s?
My involvement in Der Stürmer waned greatly over the 1930s. By 1939, I had over 300 people working for me. Obviously, I was unable to oversee the work of 300 people, and my beliefs certainly did not align with each of theirs. By 1940, I was removed from Nuremberg, where the Der Stürmer offices were located. I wasn't even in the same city as the newspaper and was unable to visit it. I retired to my farm, Pleikerschhof, in Kattelsberg, which was west of Nuremberg, so my control over what was being published in Der Stürmer was even more limited.
My final question is, do you feel remorse or regret for your actions?
I feel no guilt, as I am not guilty.
The defense is finished with their questioning.
Thank you, defense and defendant. The cross-examination may now begin.
Were you the editor and publisher of Der Stürmer? Is this true?
From 1933 and on, I was only the publisher. I was not the editor or writer.
From what years were you a member of the Nazi Party till you were removed?
The prosecution's case is built on assumptions and implications. In the prosecution's opening statement, they reference documents M20 and M39. Both articles I did not write.
You didn't answer the question. What years were you a member of the Nazi Party?
I was a member of the Nazi Party until 1940,
Okay.
beginning in 1921.
In your statement, you said that you never wanted to inflict violence on the Jews. Is it true that you said the following quote from document 2583 PS? We know the enemy, we have called him by name. For the last 20 years, he is the world Jew, and we know that the Jew must die. Did you say that?
That is not an order. I did not tell the readers
Did you say it? I never asked if it was an order. Did you say that?
The Jews must die is not telling the readers to murder the Jews.
Okay, so you said
It's
it.
not an order. As I've been saying, I do not hold any power over the Germans to order such acts. I never ordered the readers of Der Stürmer to take action and harm the Jews. I had to amp up what I truly believed to make money. If I truly believed all the Jews should die, why would I employ a Jewish man?
So you said that you wanted to get rid of the Jews peacefully, but here you're saying that you want them to die. Is death, would you consider death to be peaceful? Would you consider that to be nonviolent? I never said that you ordered it, but you did say this quote.
Does it say when? Does it say how? Does it say like how many? Like, no, it doesn't. I don't say the Jews must, like, you must murder the Jews at this date by this way. No, I never said that. I never explicitly said how that it should happen, and I never said when.
Okay, but you said that they must die. Okay, moving on. What was your aim in publishing and spreading anti-Jewish propaganda, such as accusing the Jews of race pollution and that they solely brought misfortune to Germany?
My goal of Der Stürmer was to inform the public of what I believed, the goal of every journalist's writing.
Okay. In document M6, you say that the battle continues, world Jewry itself is seeing to that anyhow, and we shall only get through this battle victoriously if every member of the German people knows that their existence is at stake. So you wanted to convince the German people that their existence was at stake. Was that one of your goals, as you previously said?
The readers of Der Stürmer were there by choice. I was not forcing anyone to read it. I wasn't even delivering Der Stürmer to everybody's doorsteps. No, they walked up to a newsstand, they bought it, they continued to buy it every week.
Okay, here's another quote, also from document M6. The continued work of the Stürmer will help to ensure that every German, down to the last will, with heart and hand, join the ranks of those whose aim it is to crush the head of the serpent Pan-Judah beneath their heels. He who helps to bring about this helps to eliminate the devil, and this devil is the Jew. So in this quote, you're saying that the work of Der Stürmer was to get the German people to join together to crush what you say is the devil, which you say is the Jew. So do you still stand by your statement that your goal was not to convince the German people?
May you please rephrase the question?
Okay, I just said the quote, and I'm asking what your goal was. You're saying that it wasn't to convince the German people that their existence was at stake, but here, this quote, you say that the work of Der Stürmer was to get the German people to join the ranks to help crush the Jew. So if not to convince the German people and to incite them against the Jews, what was your goal?
My goal was to inform the public of what I believed. That's the goal of every single journalist's writing.
What was your intention with publishing anti-Semitic children's books and with the speeches you gave to children about Jews?
As I have said before, I neither illustrated nor wrote any of the children's books that you have brought up, including The Poisonous Mushroom and the other one.
Okay, I never said you wrote them, but you published them. What was your intention? What was your goal in spreading those books and spreading the speeches?
As I also said before, no one used the school system did not have to use it
Okay.
into their system. Your time is up.
Okay. No, what was your goal? I never said they had to do it, but what was your goal in spreading these books?
Your time is up.
The tribunal will now be asking some questions.
As you stated, your ideas differed from those of Hitler. Where did you guys agree?
As I also said before, we did have as the Nazi Party, although we both had a similar belief of anti-Semitism, Hitler believed that after World War II, that it was because that the Germans lost World War II because of the Jews, and he believed that to get revenge for that that the Jews must be punished. I did not think that. I thought that the Jews should be relocated to Madagascar peacefully so that they would have their own homeland where they were not under such awful positions.
What exactly were you aware of in regards to the camps and transportation of Jews, prisoners of war, and other targeted peoples?
Since I was kicked out of the party in 1940 at the very beginning of the war, and I was on trial to get kicked out of the party beginning in 1939, my position in the Nazi Party was very limited, and I had very little knowledge of what was going on because I was kicked out. And then I retired in 1940. I retired in the beginning of 1940 to my farm in Pleikershof for the rest of the war with my 2 children and wife.
But can you state anything that you did know?
I did not know the extent of the Holocaust. I had never visited a concentration camp. And I was not aware of the policies of how it was run.
When you were kicked out of the Nazi Party, did you wish to stay in?
If someone's if someone's kicking you out of a party, you're obviously not wanted. And I was happily going to, although I was a little bit bitter that I was kicked out of the party, I was still happy that I could go retire to a farm. Retirement, it's the goal.
So if you were allowed, you would like to still be in the Nazi Party at the time?
At the time, I didn't know the extent of the Holocaust and what the Nazi Party had done. I was not high in leadership, and I was very limitedly in the leadership, basically. So I had very little knowledge. So at the time, I had no idea what the extent was. And up until Nuremberg, I did not know the extent. Up until seeing the evidence, I had no knowledge, and I could not believe what was done in those concentration camps.
Please answer the question though. Yes or no. Did you still want to be a part of the Nazi Party?
Sorry about that. Now I do not. I am happy that I'm not part of that. I am very fortunate. I'm very fortunate that I'm kicked out of the party. I was kicked out of the party.
How did you come to give speeches to children?
Well, I first began as a teacher, and I originally went into politics after 3 years being in Nuremberg in 1912, because I felt that the education system should not also have, I felt like the education system and people's religious beliefs, not targeting the Jews, I felt that every religion should be excluded from the education system. So that's why I recently got into politics, to advocate for having education system, purely education, and then the students can go to whatever religion, practice whatever religion they practice, but having it not part of the school system.
So did you actively seek out schools to give speeches to, or were you invited?
I was invited.
To further the questioning of the prosecution, what were you wishing to accomplish when publishing The Poisonous Mushroom?
The poisonous mushroom, as I also said before, I wanted to inform the younger generation how I believe Germany would triumph, would be most successful, or like would be the safest. And again, I did not write or illustrate it, and I did not edit it, I did not illustrate it, I did not write it. I was not part of that process. My Der Stürmer, the publishing company, published the book.
You spoke about being a part of the Nazi Party. Did you ever have correspondence with Hitler, either orally or written?
May you please repeat the question?
Yes, you spoke about your part in the Nazi Party. Did you ever have correspondence with Hitler, either orally or written?
I met Hitler very early on in his career and in my career. The tribunal questioning is finished.
Thank you, defendant. The prosecution may now.
The defendant has said that he never wanted to inflict violence on the Jews. There are many articles that show that he did. He very openly spoke of annihilating the Jews, exterminating them, and wanting them to die. He said it in countless different ways. The defendant also dodged the question when asked what was his intention in spreading anti-Semitism to children. The defense has argued that the articles and publications were only free speech, and that they simply spread a message that was already there. This free speech directly targeted a specific religious group and encouraged the extermination of millions of people. Streicher set a foundation for inciting the extermination of Jews in Germany through the media. A speech from document M13 dates back to 1925. In this speech, he spoke of how the Jews wanted the German people to perish and how they have brought war and inflation to Germany. He said, and this is a direct quote, "Let us make a new beginning today so that we can annihilate the Jew." In another speech from 1924, he says that Germany's misfortune was brought by the Jews alone. Streicher himself even said in document M33 that for 14 years he was repeating to Germany to recognize their true enemy, the eternal Jew. Clearly, the intention of Der Stürmer was to incite the German people against the Jews and convince them that their existence was at stake. Streicher was an accessory to murder in a scale never seen before. He was indirectly a huge part of the murder of the Jews. As a member of the Nazi Party, he was a key anti-Semitic propagandist. He used a variety of media, specifically his speeches, newspapers, and books that he published, to spread hatred towards Jews. Der Stürmer contained countless articles calling Jews the enemy and stating that Germans needed to realize this. The goal of these articles was to convince Germans that they needed to protect themselves and fight back against the Jews. His propaganda poisoned people with anti-Semitism and produced people that would willingly carry out any tasks given to them that were against the Jews. While he did not directly commit the crimes, he encouraged people to do so. The anti-Semitic message of his articles and speeches all reached the German people, and his publications were filled with the dehumanization of Jews, portraying them as devils, parasites, and murderers. He went as far as to spread this message to children. Document M25 shows the impact this had on the teaching of children, as articles and pictures falsely depicting Jews were printed out and shown at a youth hostel. The children were frequently read the articles from Der Stürmer, which contained the type of anti-Jewish propaganda I previously stated. Julius Streicher was responsible for spreading Nazi beliefs until the very end of the war. Even after he was kicked out of the Nazi Party, he still continued to publish articles meant to target the Jews and encourage their extermination. He openly spoke of annihilating the Jews, defeating them, and exterminating them. Streicher made it possible for these murders against Jews to be committed. While he said in the cross-examination that he did not write these articles, he did publish them, causing them to be spread to millions of people throughout Germany. I hope you can strongly consider the evidence presented against him and see that Julius Streicher is guilty. The evidence is all there, and he says countless amount of times that he wants the Jews to be exterminated. He preaches the downfall of the Jews and how they need to be defeated, and encourages the German people to go against them. Der Stürmer's goal is clearly to incite the German people against the Jews, and that is seen in countless of his articles and speeches. Julius Streicher, is guilty of crimes against humanity and conspiracy, and I hope you can clearly see that. Thank you.
Thank you, prosecution. The defense may now close.
To start my closing, I would like to continue my initial statement. I ask the justices, how can Mr. Streicher be responsible for the enlightenment of a generation that had already been claimed by Hitler himself through the Hitler Youth? Furthermore, Mr. Streicher cannot be blamed for a book he didn't write, didn't establish in the school systems, and was ultimately protected by the Ministry of Propaganda as free speech, referring back to the poisonous mushroom. While you may not condone the publishing of this book, the legal matter is simple. Mr. Streicher did not commit a crime. It is no question that Mr. Streicher's morality contrasts with that of the tribunal. However, that does not make him a criminal. Throughout these trials, we have heard nothing but members of the Nazi Party who had an assist in the murder of 6 million innocent Jews. But Mr. Streicher is not one of those people. As I have said, and will continue to say again, Mr. Streicher merely shared beliefs of his own in a legal manner. The consequences are not his responsibility. Following the questioning of Mr. Streicher, I hope the tribunal has come to a conclusion about his actions. I want you all to keep in mind that we are not here today to discuss the morality of Mr. Streicher or if you disagree with his actions. Quite frankly, the prosecution has done nothing but frame Mr. Streicher as a cruel man. However, when it comes to legality, their case is not plausible. If anything, the point I would like you to remember most is that we are not here today to judge the beliefs of Mr. Streicher regardless of your personal opinion. So I ask you, the justices, to set that aside and focus on the law. Do not let the prosecution convince you otherwise. Mr. Streicher is innocent, and here is why. Even when appointed Gauleiter, Mr. Streicher remained an outsider to all Nazi gatherings and had no connection to their plans for the German people. Mr. Streicher was not the first publisher of the anti-Semitic material in question. Rather, he continued an idea that had been present for hundreds of years. Mr. Streicher never carried out himself, told the people of Der Stürmer, let alone ordered Nazis to commit murder or treason. Mr. Streicher did not write a vast majority of the evidence in question. And lastly, Der Stürmer was not associated with any party, its identity remaining a private news source while still protected by the Ministry of Propaganda as free speech. I repeat, Der Stürmer and the rest of Mr. Streicher's publishings are free speech. It is no question that Mr. Streicher's morality contrasts with the tribunal. However, that does not make him a criminal. Furthermore, he was not associated with any governmental figures, including Hitler, in a way that would leave him responsible for the acts Nazis committed. Finally, may I remind you of the pivotal difference between Mr. Streicher and the preceding men you have tried. If I am not mistaken, they all upheld major authoritative roles that had a part in the murder of 6 million innocent people. 6 million men, women, and children. Mr. Streicher had no part in this horrific behavior and should not be punished for crimes he did not commit. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, defense. The case of the International Military Tribunal versus Julius Streicher is now closed. We will return Friday at 12:35 for the verdicts and closing.